Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's President Xi Jinping. Now, in recent years, the border tensions between China and India has become the site of growing tensions between the two countries. And if at all a meeting is scheduled between the two top global leaders, the border standoff is definitely going to be on the cards. Now, India has been categorical about its intentions with China that any kind of talks, diplomatic, political, will only go forward if the standoff at the border is resolved immediately. Now, for more on these developments, we are being joined by Kaldin Omu, our correspondent from Pretoria, on the phone line. Kaldin, thank you for joining us. How is the mood on the ground? Let's start off with that.
Well, currently, as I speak to you, national anthem of both the countries are being played. I'm just right outside the amphitheater of the UN buildings. There are scores and numbers of supporters of Chinese President Xi Jinping that's come here to welcome him with their country flags. There are other people from other various walks of life that have joined the Chinese diaspora in welcoming the Prime Minister. Lots of security, very tight security, as the Chinese President arrived here. But this moment is very important, not just for China, but also South Africa, as both the countries are tight trading partners in Africa for 100 and more, actually for to be exact, 134 years straight, on Chinese President as well, Cyril Ramaphosa. This morning, as stated in the press, a release that was sent out by top Chinese diplomat a few days back in a press briefing has said that both Ramaphosa as well as the Chinese President will be discussing energy infrastructure, they'll be discussing trade, investment, and also how to support, South Africa's economy recovery plan. So these are some of the discussions that will form part of the discussions. But apart from that, we've been told that important documents and MOUs will be signed on economy, trade, electricity, also in science and technology. President Xi Jinping, this is his fourth official visit to South Africa over the last 5 years. And this visit comes as South Africa and China celebrate the 25th anniversary of the establishment of their diplomatic relations. So you do know earlier, like I said, that South Africa has been China's largest trading partner, as well as,
Yeah, absolutely. Kaldin, and since you mentioned that, before we zoom out and see the global, through the global lens, of course, let's speak about President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Africa. Now, this is being painted as a summit that could, in a way, push, not just domestically, but also internationally, South Africa's intentions and, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa's influence on the global scale, especially at a time when South Korea's economy is not doing very well, especially in the post-pandemic era. So, how do you think Cyril Ramaphosa is going to push for that narrative?
Definitely, South Africa's economy hasn't been doing well, not doing very well, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. And South Africa is not, not loosening on that. They're going to take every bit of opportunity to address not just the BRIC Forum, but also send out a very strong message to the Western countries to say that South Africa, first of all, Ramaphosa the other day, just a day ahead of the BRICS Summit, reaffirmed its non-aligned stance. So that was to send out a clear message, not just to BRIC partners, but also to Western countries, stating even though South Africa's economy might not be doing very well, but South Africa has one stance, that is, they are not going to take sides, they're not going to fall into the rivalry between the global nations that's happening right now. If you look at China and America, their relations isn't at the best. So South Africa has sent that strong message, but also, South Africa this year, taking advantage of the chairship of the summit, they've invited African countries, like I mentioned earlier, at least 30 heads of state from African countries have been invited, Ramaphosa is taking all the opportunities to expose the African countries to the BRICS, stating that South Africa has gained a lot from BRICS. It has gained a lot from the New Development Bank that has funded South Africa's big projects in the country. So it wants to do the same for some other African countries as well. We know the BRICS expansion program is on the agenda. Everybody has been talking about it. And this is one of the main topics of discussion during this BRICS Summit. And South Africa, Ramaphosa stating again that they are for expansion and BRICS should be expanded. So these are some of the things that Ramaphosa has been reiterating time and again, not just to say that, we are the BRICS nations, but they want to send out a clear message to the Western countries also, stating that, coming to BRICS, South Africa will have a non-aligned stance. South Africa will not side with anyone, but when it comes to expansion of BRICS, all the parties should come together. So far, we do know that all the parties, including India, that have said that, they are for the expansion of BRICS, but this issue when the summit takes place.
Right, you make a very important point there, and for months, even before the summit started, we saw a lot of back and forth when it came to Russian President Vladimir Putin's attendance at this summit. Now, of course, we know that Putin is not going to board a flight to Johannesburg. He's not going to be here in Pretoria, but of course, he's going to attend it via a video conference. But how the West is seeing this no-show is kind of, they see it as Russia's isolation on the global platform. But that's actually not true. If we read the fine print of this, it's not true, because if we see among the BRICS members, not a single member of this bloc has chosen to impose sanctions on Russia. They have in fact consciously stayed away from blaming Moscow for the war. So if anything, these countries have boosted their trade with Russia, and even though Vladimir Putin is not in attendance himself, of course Sergei Lavrov is there, and Russia is making sure that it's heard, it's seen, and all its interests are met. Would you agree?
I think you're totally right when it comes to the topic of Russian President Vladimir Putin. If you remember, if he had his way and if there was no warrant of arrest issued against him from the ICC, he would be here in person. The fact that South Africa took such a long time to make a final decision to tell or to request Russian President Vladimir Putin not to come to South Africa speaks a lot. And if you remember, it was not weeks, but it was months. And South Africa became the target of the West. Even though in the summit the Western countries were not invited, but eyes and ears was on South Africa. The whole world was looking to hear whether or not South Africa will invite President Putin. And finally that happened, after several phone calls, after several meetings, Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to say, I will not go to South Africa, I will not set my foot there, but I will participate in the conference virtually. And if other BRIC leaders had this, a negative feeling towards this, they would have said, come together and said, no, you cannot participate in the summit, but they cannot do that as Russia is part of the BRICS bloc. So I don't think, Russian President Vladimir Putin will feel isolated. And as you mentioned, if you look at the BRICS program, he's there in each and every session. He will be participating virtually. Exactly. And his foreign minister will be representing him here, Sergei Lavrov, who's already in the country.
Absolutely, Kaldin. Now, thank you so much for getting us all those insights from Pretoria. Of course, we will be coming back to you as and when all the developments happen. Very action-packed 3 days ahead of us. But yeah, for now, thank you so much for joining us.